Good morning, everyone. So, today you and I are going to talk about taking initiative in the workplace. So let's get into it. Now, this requires us to get ourselves a little bit of context. Hopefully you will bear with me, because context is useful in this scenario. Anywho, so the other day I was talking to one of my bosses, basically, and we were discussing my performance within the company and so forth. And to give you a little bit of understanding of my situation, I work at a startup company where there's a lot of emphasis on innovation, being creative, and pushing the boundaries, which is very, very common in the startup world. Everybody's innovative. Hey, we're innovative. Trendy. And for the most part, I can keep up with these trend words and being innovative and so forth, and having a lot of ideas comes very naturally. However, there's a bit of a problem. And that's what I was talking to my boss about. He was asking whether or not I felt motivated and so forth in my workplace. And I said, well, I do feel a lot of motivation in terms of working here and so forth, and providing these ideas and improvements and trying to innovate. It comes fairly natural. And then he asked, but I don't really get that sensation that you're pushing things, Frederick. Why is that if you feel that it comes fairly natural? And I said, it's actually very simple. I don't know you. I don't know you. And he kind of looked at me and like, what do you mean you don't know me? Well, let me explain it to you this way. In order for me to build something creative or innovative or something that brings a lot of value, all I really have to ask myself is, who am I building this for? If I'm building it for myself, it's very easy to get it right. If I'm building it for somebody I've talked to and I have a specification, which is usually the case at larger companies, the product manager or your boss will be very thorough in explaining to you exactly what they're looking for. You have specifications, you have a really long discussion, something of that nature. In the startup world, this is usually not the case. What usually happens is that you have a bunch of people, middle-aged and younger, who come together. They're about as experienced as you can imagine, and usually they declare their own work processes, something that kind of just works because at a smaller company you don't really have the time and the money to have really long processes and good specifications and all of this good stuff, which usually is the case at the larger companies. So what happens, and this is what I told my boss, what happens is that you depend on each other's personal relationship to a great extent. Because if you tell me, I said this to my boss, because when you tell me that you want me to build something and you don't tell me exactly what it is that you want, you are putting a lot of pressure on me as an individual. Because if I build something, if I start taking initiative and I build something that I'm thinking is going to be a good idea, but you and I are not synchronized on our perspective how to bring value to this company, I will build the wrong thing. And you are going to get frustrated with me and annoyed that I'm never doing the right thing. Because, and this is what I said, because not taking initiative is actually better than taking the wrong initiative. And he kind of said, well, I don't really agree with that. And I said, well, okay, let me explain it to you let me explain it this way then. If you tell me to build something and I start building and I build the completely wrong thing, I start improving in areas that you as you're basically wasting your money and the company's time, the company's money and time on things that you as the manager you're supposed to know what the best path forward for the company is. If I'm wasting the resources of the company when the resources are limited, that's a bad thing. But if you tell me exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, the worst thing that can happen is that I produce exactly the sort of value that the company needs. I will not be able to produce more, but at the very least I won't cost the company anything. And that's a big distinction to have. And I argue that when you first start out in this ad hoc method of working, or this more trendy agile startup type of environment, if you don't already connect on a mental level, you have to put a lot of energy and effort into making sure that that happens if what you want is innovation and initiative from your developers. Because as I said, it's very tricky to build innovative, useful things for somebody you don't understand, or somebody you don't really know, and somebody who never puts any real effort into making sure that that is communicated to you. Because, and this is also something I said, it's very easy to simply tell people to be innovative. But if you don't allow them to kind of figure out what good innovation is and what bad innovation is, you're just going to have a bunch of people who waste the company money. And that's usually the case for these. You may not know this, but there's a trend that is going on in IT these days, which is called a hackathon. Now, a hackathon is basically just the idea that you have 1 or 2 or several days where the developers all get to build whatever they want. And I think that the biggest reason why these things came around is to keep the sort of developers who are forced to work in very conservative old code bases, to allow them to actually do something apart from what they do in their workday, right? But it's grown to be more about innovation, trying to push new ideas, which I think is great, and it does actually sometimes it does bring a bit of value to the company. But what I do find more often is that if you think about it, the time someone spends on one of these hackathon ideas, which is usually, as I said, 1 or 2 days, is very often it's more the case that you produce maybe 1 decent idea for 100 attempts. So it's not really true, or I wouldn't say that it's necessarily true, that these sort of hackathon ideas brings a lot of value to the company. It does bring a little bit of a spark of innovation and maybe some team building, but it's not often an idea, just because that's one perspective a lot of companies have, that hey, if we have hackathons, we will be like innovative, and we will find some little easy trick we can use, or some developer's going to come up with something awesome and we're going to make money from that. That's usually not how it works. Good ideas take much longer than 1 day to come up with. In general, I'm not saying that you can't, but my experience is that these kind of hackathon projects is like weekend projects. You build them and get them to work, you're excited, and then they start collecting dust, usually. So in order for these ideas to be good, or at least beneficial to the company, it's very important that the people who sit down and actually write this software or do the innovation, that they are all in sync on what's best for the company. That's the important part, and that's why I don't really like this idea of having to, as I said to my boss, when you start getting into a group, you have to put a lot of energy and effort into building a team where everybody kind of connects on a mental level. Because if we connect on a mental level, this happens naturally. Innovation and all this stuff and taking initiative, it happens absolutely natural if everybody is in sync. But when they're not in sync, that's when you have to have specifications. That's when you have to have processes and people who actually take responsibility for communicating clearly what it is that is required in order to meet the deadline or whatever. So throwing around that word innovation is, as I said, it's a little bit, it's asking quite a lot from someone who is really only trying to get to a point where it's possible to take initiative. And for you out there, all I can tell you is that when it comes to taking initiative and having ideas and coming with improvements to your project, you should do that. It is very encouraged to do these things, and I think it is the way to go. But just make sure that you know your boss and the company's values and the company's needs well enough first, so that you can build the right thing. Because trust me, it's much better for you to not waste money and time trying to improve and be all trendy if you don't know that. Not taking initiative is better than taking the wrong initiative. Have a great day.